So I'll throw the greens in. Hey, it's Greg here with maritimegardening.com, and today I'm going to cook up a lunch, pasta meal with some weeds and other things like that from the garden. Weeds that are growing in the garden, weeds that are growing in my lawn, and perennials that I keep in my garden that taste like weeds. That is to say, to have them raw, they're a little bitter, they're not so great, but I'm going to show you a great way to cook them up so that they just really add to a nice meal. So let's get started. We're going to go out in the yard and gather up some stuff. So here we got dandelion. I got dandelion here that's gone to flower, and another one over here that hasn't gone to flower. Okay, so that's, to me, the ones that haven't gone to flower are better. Flavor's better. All right, I'll grab some of that. So right here in this part of the garden, I've got this weed called curly dock. Big green leaf and perfectly edible, almost like a kale sort of thing. So whenever these grow, I like to leave them alone, especially early in the season when there isn't a lot coming out of the garden, right? Because it's, you know, most of the greens I've planted are like an inch or two high. They're small, right? But this is perfectly edible. Tastes great. I like it. Oh, there's a slug. Slug's perfectly edible, but I don't want it. All right, so there's some curly dock. Over here, this is not a weed. This is just Egyptian walking onion, but you know, you take a piece off each plant. Right, nice oniony sort of taste. I got tons of them, so why not use them, right? You can use these in just about anything. These are great in a salad, actually. These ones are fine in a salad. You want that nice light oniony flavor. Over here I've got an actual cultivated form of dandelion. Got a couple little flower heads showing up there. I just nipped those off because I don't want this to go to flower at all. This is a variety of dandelion that's actually grown for its greens. You know, eating these raw, they still taste, you know, if you've ever eaten like raw green dandelion greens, to me, dandelion greens taste kind of like poison. And these ones raw aren't great, but when you cook them, they're good. We'll get some of that. Over here we've got French sorrel. It's a perennial plant. It comes back every year. It grows like a weed, even though you know it's a cultivar. But eating these raw, they've got a really sharp, lemony taste. They're good added to things. You don't want to make these the star of the show. They're the backup singers, but they add a nice, well, lemony taste. You can't grow lemons in Canada, but you can grow things that have a sort of citrusy, acidic taste like these. I think 3 or 4 or 5 of these is all you need in a garden, all right? Keep you in the French sorrel business. Here's a perennial I grow. This is lovage. It's kind of like a perennial form of celery. So one piece like that is all you're going to want for a celery hit, right? For a stir fry or for a meal. Maybe if you're making a soup, you use 2 pieces like that. But that's all you need. This, you plant this once, it comes back every year. This can grow 6 feet high once it's established. It's a great thing to have in your garden. All right, so here we got everything we gathered outside. So we got some, actually, you know, off camera, I found a parsley plant that from last year. So, you know, if you leave parsley in the ground, it'll send up leaves in the 2nd year, but it's going to go to flower and that sort of thing. So you really don't want to leave that there, but you can use them this time of year. There, we got a sorrel here. I'm just going to process this and show you what I'm doing. So, I mean, this is a dandelion green here. I just take off the sort of the stemmier part of it, right? Just take off anything that's thick, hard. It takes a couple seconds. Already got my nice Egyptian walking onions. They're ready to go. And all of these, here's the French sorrel. I just snap off the stem. I mean, you can eat the stem, but you know, it's all up to you, right? French sorrel, dandelion, right? A couple more of these things. But what I have here in this bowl is basically a salad. And there's people that will eat this like a salad, and there's a snail. But for me, the flavor is just not, I mean, you watch a lot of these videos and people eat these things and they act like they taste great, but either these people have no taste buds. Some might make the argument that they're growing in some magic soil that makes everything taste good. I don't adhere to that philosophy. That doesn't make any sense to me. Some plants are just bitter and sharp, and they are that way for a reason, right? It helps them avoid being eaten to death by herbivores. Here we got the lovage. I'm just going to take off the leafy parts and leave the stem behind. And some people might say you could save the stems for soup and stuff like that. Sure, if you've got if you've hardly got anything to work with, do that. But I mean, I've got an incredible abundance. Here's the curly dock, right? So you can remove the stem, kind of shuck it off a little bit if you want, because it's the leafy part that's the best tasting part. These dandelions, I just sort of break off the bottom, almost like the way you'd, clean an asparagus. And there's some dirt and stuff in like with this here, so I gotta clean it in the sink, right? I gotta make sure all the dirt is off of them, because you don't want dirt in your meal, right? And the best way to remove dirt from vegetables when you're going to cook them, and what I'm doing here might seem tedious, but it doesn't take long, is to put everything in a bowl, fill the bowl up with water, shake everything around, lift it out of the bowl, dump the water, fill the bowl up again, right? Basically rinse, wash, and repeat, right? You fill the bowl with water, you put the vegetable in the bowl, you shake it around a bit, and then you take the vegetable out and leave the water in. Don't pour it through a colander. Lift the vegetable out, because most of the dirt is heavy and it's going to go to the bottom, and so you want it down there when you lift the vegetable. Here's another one of those curly docks, right? These actually, you can eat them raw. They're very, they don't have a strong taste. I don't know why they grow in the wild, because they do not, like dandelion green, you eat a couple of these in your mouth, to me anyway. I'm very sensitive to whatever's in dandelion greens. I think it's oxalic acid. The curly dock is extremely mild, very edible. Some years I even contemplate picking all the wild ones I see and just making a garden of them, because they're just they don't have a great flavor, but they don't have a bad flavor. They're basically a green that can be added to anything, a soup, a pasta sauce, a salad, anything, because they have a fairly neutral flavor and they're perfectly good for you, perfectly nutritious. All right, so this is all sort of nothing food. So I've got a couple snails in here. All right, so this is what I'm left with. I got these, right? And I got these Egyptian walking onions. All right, so I'm just gonna wash this. I got some water heating up in the stove. I'll come back to you when it's time to get things to the next stage. I gotta get the water boiling, gotta get the pasta in there. I'm gonna make a pasta dish, all right? With lots of greens. That's the idea. All right, so I started cooking and I didn't have the camera on. I thought it was on, but it wasn't on. Anyway, I put about the amount of pasta I can put between my thumb and forefinger in the pot. Got the water boiling with about a half a teaspoon of salt. And I took all these greens and I basically washed and chopped them up. I filmed everything, but you can't see it. Anyway, everything looks like this, right? This is a salad, really, right? But this is a salad that, to eat this raw, you'd have to be an extraordinary human being with extraordinary taste buds, or a deer, or a rabbit, which I am not, right? I am a primate. So these things need heat. For me anyway, these things need heat to be good. So we got the greens all ready to go. These will go in at the very last minute. So I'm gonna put a pan on the stove and get it hot. For me, the length of time this takes to cook is roughly equivalent to the amount of time it takes to cook the noodles, so 10 minutes. So, I mean, you come in the house, you fill up the pot, you turn the water on. 15 minutes later, you should have a delicious meal. And I make this for my kids on the weekend all the time. It's one of their favorite things. We call it herby pasta, even though it's basically weedy pasta. Later in the season, when I've got more herbs coming out of the garden, we throw a lot of herbs in it. This time of year, it's just weedy pasta, right? Everything still has that nice green taste. I suppose I've got some cilantro here that I've preserved. I also got some garlic scapes that I preserved from last year. And I have my garlic. I mean, right, this is May, right? But I've got my garlic from last year, which I'm still using, right? I grow enough garlic that if you preserve all the scapes, basically you just make a paste of the garlic scape plus some oil, plus some lemon, plus some salt. And you put all these in the freezer and you take them out as you need them. Same with these things, you keep them cool. If you got a spare fridge, you put them in the fridge. If you got a cold room, you put them in a cold room. They have to be kept cold or they'll start to, and once they hit a certain temperature, after a certain amount of time, they start to grow, right? So this is, anyway, I'm gonna put 1 clove of garlic here and maybe a heaping tablespoon of this garlic scape paste. This is not as strong. You can just use all garlic for this, or you can use all this. I've just got all these things I'm trying to use up, right? So that's what I'm doing. But you use whatever you've got, right? And if you don't have garlic in your garden, go buy some. And any garlic will do. Right? The great thing about this, this paste here is that you don't have to process it. It's always ready to go. If you're in a rush, you can just throw, if I was going to make this dish without actual garlic, I'd use maybe 2 good tablespoons of this stuff for a meal for one, because it doesn't have the strength of garlic. This garlic scape paste, and I've got a video on how to make this stuff. I'll put a link to that at the end. This stuff has maybe half the strength of garlic, right? It's much milder. But I mean, every one of your garlics, if you grow hard-neck garlic, put out garlic scape, and they all come out at the same time, so you can't use them up in time. You can use them in things, but you can't use them up in time. You just can't keep up with it if you grow a lot of garlic. So you make this paste and use it as you need it. Take it out of the freezer. All right, so we got this. Now the other thing I'm going to add to this dish, just give this a stir. For me anyway, you want to have something savory. You can add bacon, right? I mean, if you're a vegetarian, don't do any of this. You could add maybe sun-dried tomatoes or something savory like that. But normally I use, if I'm making this for my family, for all 4 of us, I make a lot more, and I would use a whole tin of anchovies. But today I bought these kippers. It's like smoked and salted herring. Very strong flavor, very intense. They've got bones in them, but if you cut it up really fine like this and fry it, the bones, really, you're not aware of them. Let's put it that way. You just cut that up really fine. And this will add, I mean, I've got an 11-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy, and they love it. No one told them it's bad. Right? Something about, if you're turning your nose up at the idea of anchovies or the idea of smoked salted herring. It has an intense flavor. And if you know anything about Asian cuisine, fish sauce is like a key ingredient in a lot of things, because fish and saltiness are just great flavors to add to things, especially dishes like this where you haven't got any meat, right? They just, something about your taste buds. It's always good to have some fish sauce in your fridge. Plan B is plan A is anchovies or something like this. Plan B is a fish sauce. It always adds something to the dish. So, that's what you do. Of course, if you're vegetarian, you're not going to do, if you're a pure vegan, I guess you're not going to do this, but if you're a pescatarian or whatever, this is a great way to sort of amp up the intensity and flavor of the dish. Let me take you over to the pan and we'll start cooking this stuff up. All right, we'll give that past a little toss. Under control, I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit there to half. Heat was on high, now it's on half. All right, so I'm going to put some oil in here, maybe, a tablespoon, give or take. Maybe 2 tablespoons. All right, this is olive oil. You can use any oil you got, right? Now I'm going to throw this garlic and the fish in there, like so. I'm going to throw a teaspoon, this is stuff called sambal, I don't know how to pronounce this, sambal olek, ground fresh chili paste. This chili paste, you can get this in any Asian store or the part of the grocery store that sells Asian stuff, or you can just use crushed chilies. It doesn't really matter. And you don't have to add this, it just adds a little heat, right? Use whatever. I like a little bit of heat with this dish, all right? Just move that around a little bit. Doesn't take long. Got some dried herbs here from last year, some oregano from last year. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of that, right? Just add some herby flavor, because it is herby pasta after all. If you got some turn this down a little bit, it's a bit hot. A little bit of basil's nice too, if you got that. I mean, you use fresh if you got fresh, you use dry if you got dry. Won't matter. The fresh is better, of course, but use what you got, right? Okay, I can see that garlic is golden enough. So now I'm going to add this, I'm going to turn that down a little bit. I'm going to add this garlic paste. So I'm going to add like the equivalent of about 2 tablespoons because I like things garlicky. Right, healthy amount. Move that around a little bit. Doesn't take long. I'm going to keep everything moving here. You don't want things burning. All right. Now I'll throw the greens in. Notice I haven't added any salt yet because the herring, whether you're using anchovies or herring, it's salty, right? So, you know, you might add a pinch just to wilt down these greens, but you don't need much salt with this, right? Because you've already got the salt. The herring has salt, and also that garlic scape paste has salt as well. Right, so all I'm doing here is just moving these greens around to wilt them down. Right, they don't take long to cook at all. A minute or 2 is all you really need, right? And by having these in here, I prevent everything from burning. I've got the heat turned down to about like 40%. I'm gonna check the noodles now. So I think they're not ready, they're close to ready. Don't throw it against the wall. Just take a noodle and stick it in your mouth and see if it's done. All right, these are done. Timing was perfect. Dump these in a colander and throw her in there. When you dump these in the colander, do a quick dump so there's still lots of liquid left with them because you want some of that liquid in there. It just helps make a nice, makes a nice sauce. And a clever thing to do is to spoon out a couple spoonfuls of the pasta water, right, before you drain these, but also you can just drain them really quick. In the colander, out of the colander really quick to get some of that pasta water into the dish, right? So that the pasta water, once it hits the hot pan, it helps to create a kind of sauce, right? Pasta water's got starch in it. It's got the flavor of the pasta. It's got a bit of the salt from the pasta water. So you want a little bit of that pasta water in with the dish, just to give it a bit of flavor, give it a bit of intensity, a bit of liquid, soften everything up, right? And just to add a sort of a sauce effect, right? So I can see looking at this right now that all the greens are basically cooked. Everything's welted. None of these things, you've chopped them up. They're very fine greens. Takes no time at all to cook these. You're only cooking these for a couple seconds, right? That's the idea, right? They're still fresh, but they're cooked a little bit, right? So that they're not so intense. And the difference, if I made a salad out of these, it would be so intense. If you had a dinner party, very few guests, I mean, they'd have to be very polite. Very few guests would come back for your cooking. You'd have to be pretty devout raw vegetable eaters. And I've met people like this. They can eat anything raw, even no matter how horrible it tastes. These greens are all wonderful greens, but for me, they taste better cooked like this. All right, so that's done. That's ready to go. It's ready to plate. All right, so that's all ready to go. It's a quick, easy meal to make. You can scale this up and make it for a whole family. Normally, if I make this for my family, I also make garlic bread. I got a really quick and easy way to make garlic bread using the toaster. Maybe I should make a video about that. And the risk about making garlic bread with a toaster is that you could burn your house down. But it is a quick way to make it. Anyway, I'm a 6'4" guy. This is a fairly substantial meal, but I'm hungry. So this is an awful lot here, but let's see what I can get in my mouth. I'm not too fishy, just like the right amount. Salt, the intensity of the herring, or anchovies, whatever you're going to use, or bacon. Anything savory like that really adds to this meal. You could add a little pepper to this, you could add a little more salt, right? The problem with salt is you can't unadd salt, right? So yeah, for me, actually, I would add a little bit more saltiness for me, but that's all personal, right? I was trying to make a recipe that most people would like. But anyway, this is a delicious meal. Right, got pasta, maybe too much pasta, and lots of greens from the garden, lots of weeds, just things that are kicking around. They taste great when you cook them like this, and it's a great way to use them up, especially early in the season when your garden's really not producing, but you got all kinds of green things kicking around. Just cook them into things. Add them to soups, add them to pastas, add them to stuff like this. You'll enjoy them. Hope you found this interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden, have fun in your kitchen. Thanks for watching.